He had never expected a blind date to feel like stepping into a small stage set, meticulously arranged yet strangely intimate. The cafe was tucked into a quiet corner of downtown, its soft amber lighting casting gentle shadows on the exposed brick walls. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the faint aroma of pastries, creating a comforting warmth that contrasted sharply with the chill of the evening outside. The billionaire adjusted his designer blazer, aware of the rare luxury of free time, and tried to settle his racing thoughts. Blind dates were, for him, a novelty, a brief diversion from meetings that dictated millions of dollars with the flick of a pen. She arrived with a calm confidence that made him sit up straighter, noting the ease with which she carried herself despite the chaos of life he knew a single mother often endured. Her eyes held a spark of both curiosity and caution, as though she were evaluating him as much as he was her. He caught the subtle sway of her hair, the way she laughed softly at the barista's joke, and realized how little he actually knew about this ordinary slice of life beyond boardrooms and private jets. There was something grounding about her presence, a reminder that life existed outside spreadsheets and stock prices. As they exchanged greetings, he noted the texture of her voice, warm, layered with experiences that money could not buy. He tried to hide the nervous tension that had no business showing on a billionaire's face, but there was something about this encounter that made him feel vulnerable, in the best sense. The first few minutes were a careful dance, polite smiles, tentative questions about work and hobbies, the usual small talk. Yet, beneath it, he sensed a subtle challenge in her gaze, as if she were quietly testing whether he could be more than the caricature everyone expected him to be. Sipping his coffee, he found himself laughing, a genuine, unguarded laugh, at one of her casual, sharp observations. It startled him, the way such a simple moment could feel so electric. For the first time in a long while, he felt stripped of pretense. This was not an evening of calculated appearances, this was raw, real, and entirely unexpected. And somewhere in that brief, charged moment, he began to wonder, could this meeting, meant to be a light-hearted diversion, turn into something far more significant? The conversation had begun to flow with surprising ease. He found himself leaning in, drawn to her laugh, her way of seeing the world with both humor and sharp observation. They traded stories about mundane life, childhood quirks, embarrassing first jobs, favorite books, but beneath the casual chatter, there was an unspoken assessment in the air. She studied him carefully, not with judgment, but with curiosity, as though trying to see if he was someone who could truly understand life outside the gilded bubble of wealth. Then, just as he thought the evening was settling into comfortable rhythm, she paused mid-sentence and looked directly at him. Her expression shifted ever so slightly, from warmth to something more calculating, and her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, "Were you in on it?" The words struck him like a sudden gust of wind. For a moment, he froze, his carefully constructed composure faltering. In on what? He wondered, scanning her face for any hint of a joke or a trap. She didn't blink, didn't smile. Her eyes held a sharpness that made him realize she wasn't asking lightly. There was an edge to her tone, a quiet intensity that demanded honesty. His mind raced. Could she be testing him? Or had she somehow seen through the carefully curated image of himself that the world usually accepted as truth? He opened his mouth to respond, then paused. Every possible reply seemed inadequate, either too casual or too defensive. He realized this was more than a simple question, it was a challenge. She was probing him, trying to discern whether his reactions were genuine or performed, whether his charm was authentic or just another layer of his billionaire persona. The cafe around them seemed to shrink, the ambient chatter fading until all he could hear was the steady beat of his own pulse and the subtle hum of her anticipation. Finally, he chose honesty. I wasn't sure what you meant, he admitted, his voice low but steady, letting vulnerability slip through the cracks of his usual control. She leaned back slightly, her lips curling into the faintest of smiles, not triumphant but intrigued. He could feel the weight of her scrutiny, the delicate balance of curiosity and caution in her gaze. For the first time, he sensed that this evening might not just be a meeting of convenience, but a true test of character, and he wanted to rise to it. The tension that had built between them didn't dissipate immediately. Instead, it hovered in the air, like the pause before a storm breaks. She finally exhaled softly, leaning back in her chair with a mixture of amusement and confession. "Okay," she said, her voice lighter now. "I have to tell you something." He raised an eyebrow, bracing himself. Her eyes danced with a mischievous glint, and he felt a flicker of nervous anticipation. She leaned forward again, the soft cafe lighting highlighting the determination in her gaze. This was all a setup, she admitted, a small laugh escaping her. "My friends thought it would be funny to see a billionaire on a blind date with a single mom. Honestly, I thought it was ridiculous at first, but," she trailed off, letting the words hang, as if giving him the chance to process the revelation. He blinked, processing the confession. For a brief moment, he felt a mix of relief and surprise. The question she had asked earlier, the edge in her tone, now made perfect sense. She hadn't been accusing him, she had been testing the situation, trying to see how he would respond under scrutiny. And yet, despite the orchestrated nature of the evening, he realized he hadn't felt manipulated or patronized. He had felt intrigued. Her confession sparked a shift in the dynamic between them. What had started as a playful ruse now revealed something more profound: honesty, curiosity, and the potential for genuine connection. She studied his reaction carefully, searching for any hint of irritation or arrogance. When she saw none, only a mixture of bemusement and sincere interest, she laughed, a soft, relieved sound that lightened the tension in the room. He, in turn, realized that the setup hadn't changed the reality of the moment. Every laugh, every shared story, every glance had been authentic. The joke had merely created a scenario where masks were lifted, and both of them could see each other clearly. The evening, originally intended as playful trickery, had transformed into a space where they could explore honesty, humor, and the kind of connection that neither had anticipated. By the time the coffee cups were nearly empty, the air between them was lighter, charged with a quiet excitement. The orchestrated setup had done what neither could have predicted. It had created the conditions for vulnerability, trust, and maybe, just maybe, the start of something real. Both of them understood, in that subtle, unspoken way, that this meeting was no longer about a joke. It was about discovery, and the possibilities felt endless. By the time their coffee cups were nearly empty, the atmosphere had shifted entirely. The earlier tension and playful uncertainty had given way to a rare kind of ease, a feeling that neither of them had expected but both secretly welcomed. They laughed more freely now, sharing stories that revealed their imperfections, their quirks, and the small, unguarded moments that defined who they were outside of the roles the world expected them to play. She told him about her son's obsession with dinosaurs and how bedtime negotiations often felt like a delicate peace treaty. He shared stories from his life that he rarely allowed anyone to hear: the quiet nights in his penthouse, the moments of loneliness despite the wealth and acclaim, the small failures that shaped him far more than his successes. There were no walls between them anymore, only the fragile, exhilarating thrill of mutual understanding. At one point, she paused, her eyes catching his in a moment of quiet reflection. "You know," she said softly, "I didn't expect to actually like this, or you. I thought tonight would be a joke. Something to laugh about with my friends later. But this feels real." Her voice carried no pretense, only the honest surprise of someone discovering a connection where they didn't expect one. He smiled, a mixture of humility and amusement in his expression. "I wasn't expecting it either," he admitted. "I came here thinking it would just be a distraction from my usual life, and somehow, it turned into one of the most interesting evenings I've had in years." As they stood to leave, the soft glow of streetlights outside cast long shadows across the cafe floor. He walked her to her car, the chill of the night air sharp against their warm conversation. They lingered at the door, neither wanting to let the night, or this unexpected connection, end. She laughed softly, shaking her head at the absurdity of the situation. A setup turned into this, she said, gesturing vaguely between them. He chuckled. "Sometimes the best things happen when you least expect them," he replied. When they finally parted ways, the laughter and lightness of the evening lingered between them like a shared secret. The playful setup had revealed something far more valuable than either had imagined: a genuine bond, an unanticipated spark, and the thrilling possibility that this accidental meeting could be the beginning of something extraordinary. As she drove away, and he watched the glow of the cafe fade behind her, both of them carried a quiet hope that life's surprises, even the ones that start as jokes, sometimes turn out to be the moments that change everything.